Today, I'm going to look at a really interesting collection of drawings of old towers. And I guess the story goes that these towers they're all entries in a competition. And what they say is that because of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, somebody in London was like, we need to build one like that, but bigger. And so they allegedly had a contest, and people sent in all sorts of some very wacky designs of towers. But I think that this is one key to unlocking the fake history, kind of similar to the star fort thing. Like, hey, were all these star forts laying around, and nobody really brought that to our attention in history school. It seems like they were hiding that, the fact that there's star forts all over the earth. I think another thing that is hidden like that are these towers, and I think consensus is that these towers had something to do with blimp travel and that they docked there. And so it's a sort of mini airport, I guess, but for blimps, a docking station. And I agree with that. It seems very likely that that's the main purpose that these types of buildings served. So this is a building that existed and we have photos of it, but it was demolished, like all sorts of old world wondrous buildings that still would make us wonder today. What this one especially looks like something new was put on top of something old, but was it just designed that way and this was their aesthetic? But this was demolished. And this is the new Brighton Tower. They say it was an observation tower. I think it was probably a place for blimps to dock. And it looks a lot like one of the towers that is suggested as an entry for what we're going to look at later. I'm just going to show a lot of pretty pictures today. I'm not going to try to do a real deep dive into anything. But very similar looking to, this is one of the entries. We'll see a lot of things that look like this. Some of them had little explanations of what they were supposed to be all about. We might read some of the descriptions. Some are interesting. They all had electric lights though. And very similar looking, like a castle on bottom with this steel lattice thing going up top with, in all likelihood, a blimp docking station at top as seen here. And I just thought this was interesting, the money thing. There would be I'm reading at the very bottom here. There would be 3 double elevators. It is suggested that there should be 400 rooms at a rental of £25 per annum, which would produce 10,000 per year. Could you imagine rent $25 for a whole year's rent? This one was crazy. I'm just going to show you some of the crazy ones at the very beginning and then get into the bulk of them. But this one was really crazy. Huh. Stick an obelisk on top of an Eiffel Tower looking thing. The type selected is the monoliths of ancient Egypt. I actually remember this. This is like a weird memory I have from school. Something about like the challenge of, if you have a bunch of straw, what's the tallest structure that you can make out of straw if all you can do is like cut the straw and tape it together? And apparently this is kind of an elegant solution to that, if not the best solution. Our Eiffel Tower typed objects are very strong, and you can make them extremely tall with using not a lot of material and just using like straws. And the straw thing is interesting because in reading some of these descriptions, the way they say it's like cylindrical tubes, and then they fill those tubes with ballast and Portland cement. Portland cement is interesting. I have some things out of Portland later in this video. But I mean, here it is. Here's the thing from Portland. In Portland, there's this weird old timey Lotus Island. Not too long ago, I did a video looking into Lotus Island, and they had their own tower, Eiffel Tower looking structure here. I think these were all over the place, and I think that they served the purpose of, it's where airships would dock and leave from these locations. It's like an old timey airport except for the blimps. And that's an interesting thing altogether. I think that the whole aviation thing is like a way for them to gatekeep travel through air, that they've made it seem much more complicated than it needs to be. And I think that lighter than air airship travel, well, first, people would maybe figure out that gravity is a hoax and that it all comes down to buoyancy if we were just all floating around in our lighter than air vehicles. But part of me thinks that that's the more blessed technology, and that it was more readily available to people, that like with a little bit of know-how anybody could kind of make their own airship. This is just a recent thought I had. And that the whole jet thing, it's all gatekeeping. They make this very overcomplicated monstrosity that's like fallen angel tech, pretty much. And that's the only way that you're allowed to get around, is you have to submit to them and take off your shoes at the airport and do whatever they say, instead of a more elegant solution to air travel. So here we go. Let's just get into it. I'm going to link it as a comment and pin the comment. I'm going to link it in the description. I'm sure that you could type this in and you would be brought to this. Type it into Google. Catalog of the 68 competitive designs for the Great Tower of London. Let's just look at some of the pictures and read some of the things about these towers. This one is crazy. And of course, people will say that, oh, this is just a design contest, so people were going crazy with it because it's just a contest. You can dream up anything. But I personally believe that these designs probably came from somewhere, and that this type of tower building was a big thing. Oh, I also believe that the Eiffel Tower was already there after the last reset. They almost got rid of it, like they get rid of all sorts of things from the past. But that one stuck around, and I think that there were probably all sorts of Eiffel Tower-like structures that were just taken down, and now we just will never know about them because they were simply taken down, and the sands of time, we've forgotten about them. So just looking through all of these designs, I think that this was just a thing, that cities would build magnificent towers to, as uh, well, airship, part of the airship thing, but it was just part of the thing to make your towers extravagantly detailed, looking like a castle on the bottom. They had all sorts of entertainment going on and lodging in these things, and it was a big showcase of the electric lights, and I'm sure that they would be used to collect the atmospheric electricity as well. And so I think these were probably all over, and just so happens that they kept the Eiffel Tower around. And they didn't want to. Many people didn't want to. They really tried to get rid of that. And I've been up on the Eiffel Tower, and you can tell that the Earth is flat from up there. You can tell that the city looks exactly like a map at your feet. When you're up on the Eiffel Tower, it is flat. And it's interesting, a lot of these proposed towers have scientific things on the top, observations, or they'll have like an observatory on the very top and other scientific stuff built into it. This one was kooky. Look at the ornamentation on that, though. But I think that this shows that building ornamented towers was a big thing. Otherwise, how would you get so many different architects to make things that look so out there? And I just don't think that you would expect so much diversity in ideas unless this was kind of a already developed thing at the time, building towers. And anyways, that's just how I feel about it. That they seem very advanced for horse and buggy alleged people. And some of these take on very futuristic seeming vibes to me. They seem very futuristic. Let's see if any of these pictures look clear enough for me to read out. These are looking a little fuzzy. You can go look at the original website that you can look at this. It's not going to be as fuzzy as this. So you can go check that out if you want even more beautiful pictures. But I just think these are even cool. Just like, okay, so this was interesting. This design has been, it's kind of hard to read here, but they say it's inspired by these other towers. What is this tower? The Tower Atesh Gah at Firuzabad. Sorry about the quality, but I'm gonna stop here and say that I've seen some old historical maps where it looks like a really old town and it's full of these towers, and they look like masonry towers, and these are all steel lattice towers, so it's a kind of a different thing. But I think that there have been many peoples in times past that liked to build impressive towers. We think of high rises, being a modern thing, but I think that people have been trying to build impressive structures for a long time, and they just want to erase history, and they got to make people think that we're at the peak of history right now. That's a lie that they have to sell. That history has never been to this point before. They want you to think that people in times past didn't know how to deal with their poop, even. They were that stupid, but they were allegedly building stuff like this and designing stuff like this like it was nothing. Like it was totally normal to be building and designing things like this. This one legit looks like a rocket ship. Look at this one. This one is like futuristic mixed with Notre Dame vibes. I just want to keep this as an introductory thing. Maybe I'll dive deeper into it later. Look at this cool one. Some of them had like a railway that would go up it. I already showed this one. This one's crazy. Circumferentially, radially, and diagonally bound. This is interesting. I don't know if this is the one that talked about it, but this at the beginning, capability of being taken down in sections, each section being useful for other purposes. I don't think this is the one that says about it, but one of them in like the main features that it claimed, it said can be taken down in 6 weeks. And I thought that was interesting that they would say one of the reasons to build this tower is that it's easy to take this thing down. And maybe that's just the nature of building these types of towers, that you want to be able to put them up easy and take them down easy for whatever reason. I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know. That was just an interesting component of these towers. Maybe somebody out there knows. I'm I don't consider myself an expert on anything. I'm just a guy who likes to make videos of my ideas and all that. And this is from a viewer sent me this stuff. A lot of times I look through the comments and you guys have really cool stuff to share. So let me know what you think about this stuff. I don't have any good ideas on this. I just think it's really fascinating and think it shows that history isn't what they tell us. Stuff like this, it's hard if you just take everything they say about history at face value. It's hard to swallow stuff like this, like how how this exists at all. That people would be discussing this stuff like it's normal to build towers like this. Or this. This is like a souped up. This is like supercharged Eiffel Tower. And who know actually the Eiffel Tower did used to have more stuff on it. It used to be more highly ornamented, kind of more like this. I would have to look into that though, but I mean, everybody knows that they tried to demolish the Eiffel Tower, but I'm almost certain too that the Eiffel Tower actually used to be more ornamented than it is today, which is we see that everywhere. They've had to spend a lot of time taking away the ornaments on all of the buildings around. And a lot of times that's what the facades are all about. They just like break off the fancy exterior of the building and put up something more plain. So yes, this is the descriptive illustrated catalog of the 68 competitive designs for the Great Tower for London. This is some nice typesetting. Cool different types of typefaces too that they have. You would think it would be really plain, but it looks great. Even today, looks very, very well put together. The illustrations are all engraved to the uniform scale of 300 feet to an inch. So this design, I guess, got second prize. Wow. This is like that very first one I showed in England where it's like a castle on the bottom with the thing, but this one's like even more impressive, like a castle bridge like structure, which those exist. Those still exist in some places, castle bridges. London Bridge, I think, was like that. London Bridge used to be a highly ornamented like castle, or it was like apartments, or you like lived, people lived on it, and it was, more of like this type of bridge than just a roadway. This was the first prize, kind of this simple, but this thing's huge. This was humongous, bigger than the Eiffel Tower, but a pretty simple design, won first prize. You know, more practical than a lot of the other ones. But I think that these types of towers existed all over the place, and that's why there's a bajillion architects out there that can submit their own designs of these towers. They probably have designed these types of towers before, and these types of towers probably existed all over the place, not just in Paris. I mean, I showed you the Lotus Island thing from Portland. That type of tower probably existed all over, and it it seems like they were able to be put up really easily and taken down and moved if they had to, or repurposed in some way. That's one aspect haven't looked into very much, but it's very interesting to me. It also reminds me of this old video game. Did anyone used to play SimCity? The old arcology, these types of, some of the buildings almost reminded me of this type of thing. Like these old weird giant megastructures where like it's basically a city in a structure. That's what some of the more large, crazy towers what were reminding me of. But I don't think that that was typical, but I think it's probably existed in past. And isn't that what a lot of people theorize? I don't know. I'm not saying that this is a subject that I've looked into a lot, but to me it rings true that the Tower of Babel was actually something kind of like this, like a city tower, like people were building this giant city tower and just kept building, and they're just keep building it taller and taller. Who knows how giant the base was, and just like a constant work in progress. Something that just popped into my head. Do you know how in a lot of countries, like Greece in particular, maybe like Italy too, I don't know, they never finish the top of their buildings. It'll be a house that people are living in, and there's rebar sticking out of the top, and you ask people about it, and like, oh well, they might want to build a second story soon or a third story, and it's like a continually unfinished roof on these houses. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? It's just an interesting concept of having a building that's never done being finished, and you're always ready to put more on top. You're always ready to build more on the next upper layer. It's just an interesting concept. Here is the so to to try to conclude the story. They did this contest. They handed out the winnings for the designs, and they went ahead and started to build allegedly. Now, right around this time, history is very shaky, and I don't really believe what people tell us was happening. Maybe they had already started demolishing it at this point. Maybe there already was something just as big or bigger than the Eiffel Tower, and they tore it down. Like the French wanted to tear the Eiffel Tower down. So I'm sure plenty of times it just was torn down and lost to time. Nobody knows about it now because they tore it down right after the reset. So it's possible that they were tearing it down and then they just blew it up at some point. Or they really did want to build it and they started building it. But so here, to conclude the story, that design won, they started building it, they got to this point, and then they gave up slash I don't know, and then I think they said something about the foundations not being right. Who knows? And then they blew it up. That sounds fishy to me. I kind of personally think that the tower was there and they started dismantling it, and that this whole contest is just a distraction. And some of the entries to that contest look like total fairy tale fabrication, and then some of them look like something that probably existed, and it's a picture of a tower that really did exist, and that was just taken down, and then they used it to pretend that it's an entry in some contest. So that's what I think about that. But these towers are just an interesting thing. The towers, I feel like they're a key to the puzzle in the same way that the star forts are a key to the puzzle. To believe all of their ridiculous stories about, oh, like it's the Revolutionary War, let's go build a fort out in the middle of in the water even. Let's build a fort in the middle of the water. Doesn't make sense that people would do that and that they would even have the ability to do that like in a wartime. You're fresh colonists in America, basically. What are we doing building forts out in the middle of the water? Doesn't quite make sense. Same thing with these towers, but I think that the towers, they did a better job of hiding these. They couldn't demolish all the forts. But as you saw in the description of these towers, they're able to be taken down quickly. And um, that may even have been a part of them, that they were built to be able to be taken down if they had to and repurposed. But who knows? There's also a connection to illumination. The towers and illuminations, almost all of the towers, they talk about how they're powered by electricity, and electric light was always a big part of these towers. And I think that the towers themselves collect atmospheric electricity. So there's a strong connection between these towers and electric light if you go and start researching these things. Well, that's it. That's a good introduction. I will leave a link in the comments and in the description for you to go check out all of those 68 entries. Some of them are really wild. Hope you enjoyed. God bless everyone.